Like you, I'm pretty disappointed after a 0-0 draw to kick off the Liga campaign. And I think the question that I keep asking over and over again, it's probably headline 1 through 5 from this game, honestly. I will give other headlines, but truly the headline from this game is what is the result versus what is the narrative. The narrative is that due to the media frenzy that had been drummed up over the last few weeks based on the huge signings that Barca made, their finances, all the questions, what we don't know, what certain journalists say, what certain people in the media run with, what certain big Twitter personalities seem to say, and then I feel like as Culers, you, as well as me, feel like we're constantly trying to defend this project. Why would Barcelona go out, spend all this money? They've got to be an unstoppable force. They've got to put butts in the seats, which they did, 81,000 in the Camp Nou, just like the Gambit Trophy. But they have to hold up their end of the bargain so that we have something to fight about. Because for Barcelona to go out there in a listless 0-0 draw, it feels like Culers, the world over, are now on the back foot. That all those detractors who said, if Barcelona are going for broke, they've got to get things done. But I want to remind you, Culers, that's what it feels like on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever it may be. But give it a day or two, and of course, the next big story will pass. Thankfully, Manchester United and connected to them, Gary Neville, at least online, they had their say earlier in the day, fortunately, and they were also shut up pretty badly. So it is petty, it is personal, it seems like, but no, this was just one result, 1 point to kick off the Liga campaign. Unfortunately, now Barcelona, and while 0-0 was very disappointing at home, this momentum that Barcelona has is not going to stop after just one day. I'll get into the project, I'll get into the long-term success of this project, and try to extrapolate anything from just one game of actual football that mattered with this kind of team. So without further ado, let's get into it. Again, disappointment, the wind taken out of our sails, but let's do it. 0-0 draw with Rayo Vallecano at the Camp Nou. The Spotify Camp Nou, I'll get used to it. Headline number 1 is safe start and safe end. Through 10 minutes of this match, Ousmane Dembélé had 6 touches. Robert Lewandowski had 2. Meanwhile, Barcelona had 96% passing accuracy and 79% of the possession. They were just dealing with the Rayo Vallecano pressure, which we'll talk about in headline number 2, but they were dealing with it just fine. Rayo Vallecano, through the first 46 minutes of this game, had 0 shots on goal, or 0 shots total, while Barcelona had 7. The one pushback I will give to the whole chemistry idea, you can see that this team was clearly feeling things out on the fly, where the level was increased quite a bit from a friendly in the preseason. My only confusion about that defense is that this is, at this point, until Koundé does get involved, this is the preferred 11 for Xavi. Even Ronald Araujo at right back is something where when Xavi speaks, we really need to listen, because I know people were saying he's going to put 3 at the back due to the transfers that have come in. I know that there's Dest and there's Roberto, but this is a clear message with this starting 11. Sergio Roberto is likely, I guess, the backup right back to who? Is that Koundé? Is it Araujo? It seems like it's going to be Araujo, and Dest seemingly is going to be out. Unless there's another big right back signing, which I can't imagine. We haven't any names linked. So it seems like this is the 11 that Xavi wanted to go with. Robert Lewandowski up front, Ansu coming off the bench with Dembélé and Rafinha up top, Pedri, Gavi, and Busquets. I wasn't sure if it was going to be Kessie or it was going to be Gavi, but Xavi went with the guys who were already there in Busquets, Pedri, and Gavi. And then Eric Garcia has earned his spot as a left center back. Christensen steps in. He's ahead of Piqué in the pecking order, and Koundé's not ready yet. Araujo's right back, Alba the left back. So that 11 with Ter Stegen in net is kind of what Xavi was shaping this team up to be, and they just seemed like they weren't ready. Especially in that second half, Roberto and Dembélé, who've been teammates now for 5 seasons, but very rarely have they actually been on the field at the same time in those 5 years, they look like they had no chemistry from the preseason at all. And I think that slow start in terms of moving the ball around, and it seemed like Christensen in particular was kind of getting the lay of the land, especially as a center back against that kind of pressure, just trying to figure out how do you get through traffic, move the ball upfield without causing any damage to yourself or your team. And so Christensen, I thought, was really playing it safe, almost at a detriment of Barcelona. And part of that also took the wind out of the sails of that Spotify Camp Nou crowd early on in the game. And so when they rose to their feet late in the contest, it was a little bit too late. I think those at home could kind of feel that. Even if you were at the stadium, you felt like something is still possible here, of course, because of the subs that we'll talk about later, but still, those at home, I was just watching and it's like, oh, I know how this one ends, because it always ends 0-0 when you get this many chances. But when the other team is that organized and Dimitrievski is just saving things at will, you always know it's going to be a hard day. Headline 2 is Rayo organized. So far, I've been pretty negative on the Barcelona side of things, but if you've been with me for a while now, and if this is your first time here, yeah, it's a rough one. You've probably already written a negative comment in the comments below. But if you've been with me for a while, you know that I'm going to give a little bit of a defense to Rayo Vallecano. Now, I said, yes, the preseason, things have ratcheted up to a 10th degree, starting actual games that matter. But Rayo were ready to go in this contest. The coach in Iriola had them organized, had them ready to play, most importantly. And we already said the bad news. Barça was moving the ball rather slowly. But on the other hand, I prefer to put the emphasis on the fact that Rayo were very organized. Rayo is a disaster behind the scenes in a way that would make Culers weep, the tension between the players and the president. But Iriola had them ready for this match, as I said. If not for Marc-Andre ter Stegen, Rayo Vallecano likely would have walked out of the Camp Nou today with 3 points potentially in their bag. The 51st minute save, really important, but the one in stoppage time in the first half, that could have, in theory, decided this game. Because you don't think Rayo Vallecano was going to be able to adeptly protect that 1-goal lead if they had taken it in the first half, going right into halftime? Of course, I think they would have. And I think the only thing that Rayo can't put in their cap is that this ref, his decisions today, I mean, they were here, there, certainly. When Lewandowski was brought down in the box in the first half, huge major questions should be asked of the VAR for not taking a harder look at that. Not sure what the official call was. The ref wasn't interested. He was right in front of it. And I think he thought that both players were kind of being just as physical with each other. But then the other decisions he had that the crowd didn't like, I mean, some of them were pretty easy. On the counterattack, we saw those 2 yellows for Catania and Busquets. And then the early yellow for Dembélé, and that was an easy one. And I also wanted to compliment Boosie later on, but the second yellow and getting sent off kind of sours the whole day. That was a bad call. Boosie was not the instigator of that. I don't think he knew much of the player behind him. And I'm hoping that one does get rescinded if Barcelona do choose to repeal, which they probably will. But if they don't, then it's La Real, that means Real Sociedad on the road, and we might see Pjanic, who's the midfielder who clearly is way down the depth chart and does kind of vindicate my opinion about Nico Gonzalez needing that loan, so he was actually going to get to play. As Pjanic, I don't know how many minutes he's going to play this season, but it seems like he's fine being the backup to Busquets whenever he's needed, which unfortunately might be in the second game of the season. Headline number 3 is around the outside. Now, if I say around the outside, am I dating myself with that music reference? I'm trying to keep it a little light here, but either way, my issue today certainly was an issue with a lot of people, and those who've called for fullbacks are patting themselves on the back and saying, hey, I told you fullbacks were the major problem for FC Barcelona, and today those people were vindicated. They were proven right, because on the outside, it was get the ball to Dembélé or Rafinha and hope that they could do something with it. They could have been more clinical today, certainly the two of them. Rafinha in particular could have actually put the ball in the back of the net on a number of occasions, but he didn't. And it seems like while some critics said that Rayo had figured out that Rafinha always wants to go and cut it on his left, or Dembélé always wanted to go in and get inside, whether it's on his right or his left, the fact that Xavi has the ability to switch those two so fluidly, that continues to give them options downfield. But behind them, the issue certainly was the fullbacks, who didn't contribute much of this match at all. The issue with Araujo at right back is just that at center back, you know how he's going to contribute. He's going to contribute by being the best defender on the field. But at right back, especially in a game when Barcelona have almost 80% of possession, he's going to have to figure some things out. Is it getting all the way downfield like he did in that preseason El Clasico, where we saw some 2 or 3 pretty good runs from him? Sure, but that didn't happen today because Rayo had closed down that space and were willing to sit behind the ball. Is he able to pass through lines and break something from out wide? No, he's not really able to do that yet. And fortunately for Araujo, we're going to be able to grade him on his progress and his development in that category under Xavi at the end of this season. Because he has made leaps and bounds since a few years ago at Barça B, but he still has a long way to go. Alba on the other side, well, I'm eating crow a little bit, because in the preseason, I kind of did all of that Alba criticism. I said, all right, well, we know how Jordi Alba is. He'll rev things up when the games actually matter. I'm not sure about this one. He might still be revving, but I don't know how soon it's going to be before big questions are asked of Alba. I know you're already asking big questions at home, but I mean Xavi. Marcos Alonso, if he is truly on the way, we expect him to be Alba's left back. That is how those two will be paid in the salary hierarchy. But if Alba plays the way he played in the preseason and plays the way he did today, this is really going to be where the rubber hits the road. For Busquets is still the best at what Busquets is doing as that lone pivot for Barcelona. But for Alba, if somebody is going to be better than him at the left back spot, he is a captain. He's got that distinguished role in the locker room, and I'm interested to see how Xavi answers that first question. Because you could actually say the second question, because Piqué probably asked the first one. And it seems like Piqué has completely given up to the club and said, I am whatever you need me to be at this stage in my career. Will Alba do the same, being about 2 years younger? I'm not so sure about that. 4 is substitute Lifeline. One of the other positives I guess you can extrapolate from this game is that while it was a dull affair for so much of it, the infusion of Frankie de Jong and Ansu Fati, and I guess Sergio Roberto coming in for Gabi and Christensen and Rafinha, it injected a bit of energy in that game that it needed. Frankie de Jong, once again, looked really important. Rayo at that point were laboring a bit, and de Jong was able to use his dribbling ability to find that space. Right? De Jong isn't going to create space with his passing, but he's going to find the space and move the ball up the field. That was something that Barcelona just were not doing. Gabi, while he is tremendous on the ball, his skill, his passing, he doesn't necessarily influence the game by moving the ball or shuttling it. He is just a key and a cog. And this game today didn't really suit Gabi in that way because it seemed like Barca were playing as individuals and not as a collective team. When Barca is playing as a collective team, one-touch passing and the like in the middle of the field in particular, then you get the better out of Gabi. But that wasn't the way it was today, and you needed somebody to kind of put the team on his back and somebody just have one of those special moments. And I think de Jong had the ability to do that. Ansu in the same way. For as bad of a preseason as he did, I think he kind of shut a few people up today. He's one of the few Barca players that can say, hey, we did that preseason thing, it wasn't what I wanted it to be, but I want to remind you that I'm pretty special. Rafinha and Dembele aren't that dangerous in the box, and immediately Ansu, within moments of being on the field, is an impact in the 18. Frees up some space for Lewandowski as well. That late shot from Aubameyang that Lewandowski almost got the rebound to. Ansu was the one who was attracting 3 defenders in the middle of the box. So Ansu coming on the field, especially late on, Frankie de Jong in the same way, they were the injection that Barcelona needed of energy. Unfortunately, the ball didn't wind up in the back of the net because this would be an entirely different story if it did. So with the exception of Bernardo Silva, who I did turn into the Man City match to see a bit of, just in case we need to talk about him next week or the week after, he stayed on the field, gave away his jersey, talked to fans, the whole 9 yards. But other than Bernardo Silva, and we already talked about Alonso, I don't know who else is on the horizon. And here's the other disappointing part of this, is that the substitutes that Xavi put in the game are likely the other regular starters here in this team. Yeah, there's a few, 1 or 2 choices he could have made down that bench because this team is a lot deeper. But this is basically the team, sans Koundé, that Xavi's going to have this year. And now you can make the argument, and I'm interested to see, I think we'll have to talk about this more on the podcast. Is Jules Koundé the difference between Barca winning the 3 points today and not? I'm not sure if he could have made the impact that puts the ball in the back of the net for Barca today, but I think he would have been much more purposeful taking up the space in that first half than Andres Christensen did, and I think the level of this game just raises just a bit more with a talent like Jules Koundé at the back there. Would Barca have been in more defensive trouble? Maybe. Maybe Rayo does put one home with Jules Koundé out there. But again, the real argument here is that Xavi, and this is the disappointing part, is that Xavi basically had everybody that he has to work with. There will be injuries that take people out one at a time this season. I mean, I'm hoping not one at a time like dominoes, but there will be injuries that take individuals out for random games at a time. We saw Dembele limp off. Kessie had a knock that he picked up late. Busquets could be suspended for the next one. So already, Barcelona are looking to rely on their depth. That said, I was disappointed because this was, again, basically the team. And they just did not show out, and they weren't ready to go in the Liga this season. Headline number 5, I didn't really know where to go with this one, other than I'm going to try to end it with something positive, and that is that Pedro came alive. I think it's easy to say that because he didn't really have an impact in that first half, that he didn't really do much today. But they did a really good job, that being Rayo, of shutting down that lane, that passing lane between Pedro and Busquets and Pedro and Lewandowski. There was no space for Pedro to deliver those through balls that we know he can to Lewandowski and continue to foster that partnership. But as far as individual flair and as far as opening up Rayo, in the second half, right around the 60th minute, I mean, immediately before he came off the field, we saw some skill moves, we saw him open up and use some trickery to figure out and start to solve that Rayo puzzle. And again, it's unfortunate that because I don't think he's entirely fit, I think the club, now, as I mentioned, with that training staff and the medical staff, back to a point where the head coach and the trainers, they seem to trust each other once again. Xavi chose to bring Dr. Pruna back, that it seems like the doctors, very much like Ansu, they're being very careful with Pedro. So I understand that Pedro came off when he did. It was just kind of unfortunate because I said he kind of came alive in those moments, and I felt like Pedro was about to have a big impact on that game. But alas, if we want to see him in May, he had to come off the field when he did. So there you have it. I don't know how many more times I could say that I'm just a bit deflated. I think that's the perfect word. I'm deflated. It's the headline. It's in the title. Deflated. That's what I'm feeling. That's what 81,000 people did at the Spotify Camp Nou. And I'm hoping that those 81,000 people know this team obviously is much better. I'm hoping that all of this is just shaking off, we'll say, the early nerves of not knowing each other, maybe not even nerves, but working through some of those chemistry issues. And and you know, that Xavi's going to look at this tape, say, okay, these are the things that are a problem. These are the things that we got wrong, and we got to get things right for the next one. So it's a week until then, and so we've got to break this one down on Monday's show, probably more on Thursday's show. Who knows? There might be another transfer on the way. So until then, as always, Forza Barça.